Okay. And we want to make sure to thank all the people who need to be thanked. Kahos Publication Society, Lahak Hanachas, for the Meshulam the printer, and of course Menachem Ben Shimon and his team for creating the visual look of the campaign and the Zalman Kleinman artwork. And his 30th yahrzeit is this coming Chai of, okay? Just to have a block away. And Mirza Hashem, maybe we'll do something for that. And also, don't forget that the SoulWords campaign is still open. Charity with a D, charity.com/RST, charity.com/RST. We are still trying to reach our goal so we can do more programs like this. And I got to tell you, this is behind the scenes. Levi Shem Tov probably doesn't want me to mention his name, but I'm going to. I saw some conversations happening in the basement of the SoulWords house, which I have no doubt over the coming year is going to benefit hundreds, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people. Mirza Hashem. On this day of Gimel Tammuz, when the Rebbe has his aliyah and all of the Chassidim and Talmidim, Mekusharim are also having our aliyah if we tap into it. So no doubt any discussions that were had today will bear fruit and benefit many people. And I'm very excited about the things that are going to be coming very, very soon. I don't know what they are precisely, but I know there's some good stuff coming. Okay. This is our third sitting. We just finished davening mincha here at SoulWords house, just a half a block away. And after Ma'ariv last night, we learned the first 5 chapters of the Maamar. And then after Shacharis this morning, we learned Vav through Tes. And now, in Yahzreit Hashem, we're going to learn Yud Aleph, and Yud Beis, which will take us to the end of the Maamar. Before we start Yud, let's just remember what we were speaking about, where we left off. We were talking about a concept of 2 kinds of kosis. Kosis means crushed. In the original context, it's olives getting crushed so that the oil comes out, which doesn't just give light. It's not just illumination, but it's the luminary. And we explain what that means is when the Jew is subjected to harrowing circumstances which trigger that button for Mesiras Nefesh, the etzem, the essence of the Jew is revealed, and he pays any price, is willing to pay any price to remain steadfast in his Yiddishkeit. But we talk about two different types of kosis. There's a classic type of kosis, which, remember, this Maamar, V'Atah Tetzaveh, is based on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar, which was said in the real intense days leading up to his arrest. So there were real life-threatening circumstances. So when the Frierdiker Rebbe, in the original Maamar that V'Atah Tetzaveh is based on, V'Kibel Yehudim, when the Frierdiker Rebbe is speaking about Mesiras Nefesh, he's speaking about a real situation that the Chassidim are dealing with, which is life and death. But the Rebbe says there's another type of kosis lamar, another type of crushing the olive that gets you in touch with your essence. And it doesn't require being in a life and death situation. It doesn't require being persecuted. In fact, it could be in a situation where you experience spiritual and material bounty, freedom, affluence, everything's good. Like we said earlier today, sort of the contrast between the Russian experience, especially the communist Russian experience, and the American experience, or you might call that the Frierdiker Rebbe's leadership and the Rebbe's leadership, but 2 models of kosis. And the Rebbe says, what's the kosis in our situation? It's being disturbed just because godliness is not revealed everywhere on every single square inch of this planet, to every single person on this planet. And the fact that that is not the case is profoundly disturbing and helps us to reach in and to access our deepest self. Okay, so Yud, chapter 10. V'yesh loimer shebechinas hama'er dehaneshama hamizgalis al-yidei ha'inyan dekasis mizeh shenimtzoim begalos. He nailas yeser mebechinas hama'er dehaneshama shemizgalis al-yidei Mesiras Nefesh. The Rebbe says a chidush. we spoke about these two levels, these two types of kasus. The Rebbe says it's counterintuitive that, that second level of kasus that we said also is kasus, even though there's nothing particularly wrong with your life and it's a pretty comfortable gullus. Yeah, but it's also kasus. The Rebbe says, you want to know something? Not only is it also kasus, it's a higher level of kasus. And the Rebbe is speaking to people, understand the Rebbe is speaking to people who are in this situation. As opposed, this is 1981 as opposed to 1927. And the truth is not just 1981, it's 1992. And the truth is not just 1992, it's 2025. These dates I'm throwing around are not stam numbers. The Rebbe said the Maamar in 81, distributed the Maamar in 92, but the Rebbe is saying it now in 2025, and it has relevance right now. And the Rebbe is speaking to Chassidim, to us, who he expects that we are spiritually mature enough that we don't have to have any other issue in our life rearing us on and triggering us other than just the fact that why isn't godliness revealed to everyone everywhere? And that not only does that also qualify as a kasus l'ma'or, but it's actually a higher level of kasus l'ma'or. That's the chiddush. So how do you explain that? Because that's a bold statement. How do you back that up? Okay, because after all, this is Chassidus Chabad, so the bold statements get explained. We spoke about this before in the Maamar, that at the time of Matan Torah, it was only the beginning of the Jewish people's acceptance of Torah. And in the time of Purim, that's when they really accepted it. And we contrasted those two times. What's the reason behind that? The reason that the Jews accepted or began accepting Torah at Matan Torah, when they said they were Makdim Nasa L'Nishma, is because, the particular description is Hashem held the mountain over them like a barrel. We can discuss what that means according to the Medrash and according to Al-Pisoid. But the point is, whatever it means, it's a gili malumaila, it's something that's happening to them. There's a overwhelming experience that's pushing them to have this response. As opposed to what? As opposed to nothing in particular is forcing you to respond this way. In times of Achashverosh, they didn't do it because there were spiritual revelations. There weren't spiritual revelations. They were doing it because that's just who they are. So obviously, something that comes out of you only because something triggers it to come out of you is not as deep as something that comes out of you because it just comes out of you because that's just who you are. Nothing particular triggered it. We spoke about this earlier. There's two levels of the innate faith that the neshama has. One level it's a high level, but it's not the highest level, where the soul sees godliness and therefore believes. But the Rebbe says, actually, in a way, it's a low level, even though it's such a high level, but it's a low level because it's the soul reacting to something. It sees godliness, therefore it believes. And the Rebbe says, you know what, that's kind of like the Jews accepting Torah at the time of Matan Torah because of the spiritual revelations. In other words, they were responding to something. They were moved by this great revelation. And when you're responding to something, it's never as deep as when it's just a spontaneous expression of your own deepest self. And that's what the Rebbe is asserting, that there is a koyach from Mesiras Nefesh that's not a response to any outside condition. It's just the most sincere, natural expression, spontaneous expression of your truest self. So in the times of Achashverosh, They were not moved by a revelation. Rather, they were just expressing who they are. Another way of saying that is, it's just the inherent connection that they have with Hashem because that's how they're built. Now the Rebbe says a further chiddush. Even in the level of etzem, we've been using this term etzem, the Rebbe is going to break that down into subcategories, a lower level and a higher level. Even in the level of etzem, or ma'ar, that we've been speaking about. Okay, so now we got to explain what are koiches hagloyim. Koiches hagloyim are the way the soul expresses itself. What you do. It doesn't even have to be totally external stuff. It doesn't have to be just what you do. It could even be how you feel, how you think. It could be internal stuff. The point is, it's what you do, either internally or externally, but it's what you do, as opposed to that's koiches hagloyim. Atzem is not what you do, it's who you are. Even if you're not doing it, it's still who you are. In fact, that's the wild thing. You could even do in a way that's completely antithetical to who you are, and it doesn't change who you are. It's a betrayal of your true self, but it doesn't change your true self. So listen to what the Rebbe is saying, that this type of Mesiras Nefesh that comes as a response to something, even though, yeah, it's the etzem, we said that. We said it's etzem, but from the perspective of koiches hagloyim, it's a foreign thing. It's like, whoa, what's this new novel thing that's happening to me, that I'm being excited all of a sudden? I'm being inspired all of a sudden. In other words, I mean, you can see where the Rebbe is heading. It's external, and therefore, it's not as deep, it's not as authentic, and it's not going to last. It's conditional. It's dependent. Now the Rebbe gives you an example. You want to hear an example of people whose etzem was neseir, and yet it didn't stay that way? It was conditional. It was based on being under certain circumstances. The Rebbe says, here's an example. They were in a place where there were decrees against Yiddishkeit. The Rebbe was talking about the Soviet Union, not a secret. They literally put their lives at risk, and they did so for years. It wasn't a one-time thing. They were living in a constant state of putting their lives at risk, just to be Jews. Now, that's not the remarkable part. The remarkable part is when they left the Soviet Union, they came to places where they could practice Yiddishkeit in a relatively in a comfortable way. You wouldn't recognize on them that they were living in a state of Mesiras Nefesh. It says in parentheses, kol kach, meaning not so much, meaning not like they became completely the opposite of how they were, but they were not in that state of intensity that they were living in for years. It left them. And why did it leave them? Because it was conditional. Why was it conditional? Because it was the product of an outside cause. Even though it triggered the etzem, which is your deepest self, but there was something outside of the deepest self triggering the deepest self, as opposed to what? As opposed to the deepest self just spontaneously expressing itself for no reason in particular, which is what the Rebbe is about to say is what it means that your kosos just over gullus. You're comfortable, you're good, you have religious freedom, no problems, and yet the fact that godliness is not revealed everywhere to everyone bothers you. That itself is just the spontaneous, authentic expression of the deepest yearnings of the soul. It's not a response to anything in particular. It's just a Jew expressing who he is. Okay, but let's learn inside. Because these people were talking about, who were in a state of Mesiras Nefesh for a prolonged period, what the Rebbe is breaking down the mechanics. It's fascinating of what actually was happening to them. It's almost like the koiches hagluim got bypassed. They were like living in a state of etzem, but the koiches hagluim never caught up to it, never were aligned to it. Meaning to say, it was like, this do or die survival situation. You don't have time to think, you don't have time to feel, you just have to do. And then later on, when they have time to think and they have time to feel, their thinking and feeling isn't really aligned with that super Jew situation they were in before. In other words, it brought out something super deep, but that never really had an effect on the external parts of their personality. And therefore, when they came out of that situation, you wouldn't recognize, wow, that's a guy who risked his life 24/7 for decades. No, he just looks like a guy. He just looks like a normal guy. Casual, relaxed, talking during Kaddish like everybody. It's not saying that it never happens. Yeah, good question. Why wouldn't the Hergel Naisa Teva Shenis, why wouldn't that even kick in? Maybe that's what the parentheses mean, kol kach. It's not so recognized. In other words, what you would expect. You would expect that a guy that lived that degree of intensity, now that he could do whatever he wants, he would maintain it. And it's surprising. Oh, but he's not maintaining that level of intensity. So the Rebbe says, actually, it shouldn't surprise you. And the reason is because that whole time, it wasn't koiches hagluim. It was pure etzem, which is beautiful, and we're not discounting it. We're just saying there could be a parallel also in anyone. We'll repeat the question. You're asking is this is a uniquely Jewish phenomenon. I mean, what we're discussing here is a uniquely Jewish phenomenon, obviously. Could there be parallels in general human psychology? Yeah, usually there is some type of a parallel. But, that's more of a mushal than anything else. No, we're discussing a uniquely Jewish phenomenon. We're talking about Yechidah Shebenefesh, which is a uniquely Jewish concept. And we're talking about people who were in touch with that Yechidah, but it didn't change them. And once they were removed from the situation they were in, you wouldn't recognize them as people who had lived to that degree of intensity. Okay? And what's the point here? The point is that the Rebbe is talking to us about not just revealing the etzem, but getting the etzem to become the barometer, so to speak, against which we calibrate all of our outer levels of expression. In other words, it's not enough that the etzem comes out and in the super Jew moment happens, or even if the super Jew moment happens over and over and over again for decades. The point is that when there's nothing pushing you, when there's absolutely nothing external pushing you, are you a changed person? Do you think different? Do you feel different? Do you process reality differently? That's what it means that koiches hagluim have been affected. Okay, brackets. Now, this is sort of a question. We said earlier in chapter 5 that the etzem is the etzem of the koiches hagluim as well. Yeah, true. That makes a deal here. Yeah, deep down, even the koiches hagluim, their essence is the essence. But the tzir means the shape, literally means the shape. But what do we mean by that? We mean, when you express yourself, so you choose a word. When you choose this word, you don't choose that word. Or an action. When you go to this place, you can't go to two places. You can't dance at two weddings, right? So you go to this place and not that place. So you do a mitzvah, you do this mitzvah, not that mitzvah. The tzir means the way something comes out. And on the level, and it's a lower level. It's an outer expression. Even though the koiches hagluim deep down also, their essence is that essence of the Jew which is one with Hashem at all times. That's in the essential state, in the abstract state. Maybe even say before you do it, in the potential state. But once it's in actual practice, it is what it is. You did whatever you did, and it has whatever it's on. Let's be honest. You did it well, or you didn't do it well, or you did the right thing, or you didn't do the right thing. So the point is, there could be somebody who his koiches agloyim, his behaviors, his emotions, his thinking, are not perfectly aligned with the deepest truth of his essence, which we said before is that recognition that the only reality is God. And he may not be living that way, or he may not be completely living that way, or he may not be living as deeply that way as he could. That's what we're talking about, that the koiches agloyim are not aligned with the etzem. Okay, so all of that was talking about somebody whose etzem was touched by some type of negative external circumstance that pushed him. Now, in contrast, the etzem that comes out because of no reason at all. Nothing happened to you. My goodness, what happened to you? Nothing. Nothing happened to me. However, the etzem that comes out for no particular reason other than the fact that you're just not satisfied with the fact that godliness isn't revealed everywhere. When that happens, then even the koiches agloyim and even the tziur of the koiches agloyim become aligned with the etzem. Meaning, when you get in touch with your innermost Jew because of a situation or a circumstance, that doesn't change your personality. But when you get in touch with that innermost, that pintele yid, for no particular reason at all, that will change the way you behave, that will change the way you feel, the way that you think. Because if it didn't come from outside of you, then where is it coming from? It must be your truest self. And if it's your truest self, then it's going to maintain a certain consistency. As opposed to something that comes from outside of you, when the circumstances change, no, then you won't necessarily behave consistently with it. So that's why the Rebbe is saying that the causes of being disgruntled just by the fact that we're in Gullus, without any particular gripe, other than just the fact that godliness isn't revealed everywhere in the world, that actually is a deeper level of connecting to your truest self, even deeper than being persecuted and forced to rise to the occasion of and being Meiser Nefesh. Meaning to say that Rebbe is saying the opportunity that we have in this generation to get in touch with our innermost self is an even greater opportunity than what Chassidim had in Russia during the worst times of persecution. Now the Rebbe is going to say another chiddush. This concept, the two ideas, etzem and neshama, and the tzir of the koiches, are like two different things. Hu lefi shegam etzem and neshama hi mugderes begeder. Wow. Even in etzem, there are levels. Even in etzem, there are levels. There's etzem, and there's really etzem. There's the etzem that's mugderes begeder. It's you're able to categorize it. You're able to describe it, which itself is a type of a limitation. What is its limitation? That it's unlimited. That it's above koiches agloyim. In other words, it's very funny, but that's a limitation. The fact that it's so lofty that it is beyond koiches agloyim, that itself is a limitation. Meaning it's beyond, but that's where it is. It's beyond, as opposed to also in the koiches agloyim. So that's one level of etzem. But then there's another level of etzem, the more etzemi etzem. Aval mitzad etzem neshama kamei shehi mushreshes b'ha atzmos. The Rebbe calls it etzem neshama kamei shehi mushreshes b'ha atzmos. The essence of the Jew as it is an expression of the essence of God. Hapshitas dahan neshama v'hatzir dahakeiches shelo hem kol echad. Now, the deepest DNA of the neshama and its most external modes of expression are all one thing. From the highest to the lowest, it's all one thing. Now another chiddush. The beginnis ha'ma'er dahan neshama shemisgalas ha'yidim misiris nefesh hi etzem neshama k'mei shehi mugderes be'inyan hapshita shelamayla mitzir dekeiches. The type of etzem that comes out when you're forced into a do-or-die situation, that's etzem, but it's the etzem that is loftier than koiches hanefesh. Ubechinis hamar, whereas, in contrast, the ma'er, the essence, the haneshama of the neshama, the shem is galas ayideo, inin de kosas mizeshin imtzom begalas, that comes out for no particular reason at all. Hu gilu yatzem and neshama kameshi musheshas boha atzmos. That's the expression of the essence of the soul as it is one with the essence of God. The real essence. The real essence. So yeah, the etzem is triggered by a Mesiras Nefesh type persecution scenario, but the real etzem is triggered when it's not triggered. Because if it has to be triggered by something, then there's some type of external cause, and then it's not really just the thing itself. But if there's no particular cause, then it's just a spontaneous, organic expression of the thing itself. So that's what the Rebbe is saying, that the fact that we can be disturbed just by the fact that godliness is not revealed everywhere to everyone, that is an opportunity to get in touch with the deepest identity, the deepest self of who you really, really, really are. And then when that happens, there can be no misalignment between who you are and what you do. Every level is going to be, integrity. We use the word integrity to mean someone who's like truthful or honest. Integrity actually means integration. It means everything's aligned, one straight shot. So when the real etzem comes out, like who you are, because that's just who you are, then every single level, even the most external levels, are going to fall in line and be consistent with that. There will be no misalignment. And then furthermore, as you could probably guess, there will be no inconsistency. It'll be constant. And we're going to say this explicitly coming up in the Maamar, that when the real etzem comes out, then it doesn't fluctuate. It'll be constant. All right, but we'll get to that, God willing. Yod Aleph. V'yesh l'kasha ze ima mavor b'hamaymer b'pirish hakosav V'Atah Tetzaveh es b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu elech Hashem and Zayis gomer de la'achrei shemesh yitzaveh v'kasha es b'nei Yisrael as ayaviu Yisrael l'mesh Hashem and Zayis gomer. We said Moshe connects Yidden to Orei Ein Sof, and through that Yidden bring him the oil, meaning Moshe ends up benefiting. Brings some type of benefit to Moshe. While there's rumbling in the peanut gallery, I'm going to refill my Diet Coke. Change the page? Change the page. Turn the page, sir. Yeah, of course. This is live. This is spontaneous. Yeah, that's okay. All right, no problem. So we said that through Moshe serving in his role, it actually ends up making Moshe more Moshe. We said Moshe's role is to get us in touch with our true self and make us more ourselves. And when he does that, he becomes more of himself, which is beautiful. Everyone just being their truest, authentic self. Which really, if I had to give you a definition for iskashrus without using any of the Kool-Aid terminology, I would say it is the state of being your truest self. I didn't even mention the word Rebbe or Chassid. Just the state of being your truest self. What? without trauma? Yes, exactly. Because the etzem, the ma'ar that comes out through trauma is a very high level. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the highest level. The highest level, and when it's triggered by some outside sibah, then it's not integrated. But when it is an expression of your deepest, truest self, then it is integrated. And as we're about to say, it's also consistent, it's constant, it doesn't fluctuate, it doesn't disappear on you. Okay, very good. All right. See, some people are following over here. You have to ask Mayor Adams about that. Okay. So we said that this benefits Moshe. That Yidden give additional light to Moshe more than what he has. One of the explanations, what does this mean? When the Rebbe says Ba'avedis ha'adam, it means it's a like a signal to perk up your ears that we're going to get a little bit practical here. Ba'avedis ha'adam means, your service of Hashem, but it means homework. Dezeh Moshe mitzaveh mekashes b'nei Yisrael hu shu zanim feinis es ha'amuna she'amuna tia noisef al kamei shehi mitzadeh gluim de haneshama mitzad zeh shehaneshama shelamayla royel akos gam mitzad etzem haneshama. That what Moshe does is give us a connection to a level of emunah that is greater than what the soul has because it sees Elokus. And it's even greater than that which the soul has because that's just what it is. It is an entity that accepts godliness as the ultimate reality. So what Moshe is able to facilitate is even greater than that. Brackets v'yesh loimer dezeh masha nemer V'Atah Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael the lashon V'Atah Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael mash meshemeshe mitzaveh mekash mechaber es b'nei Yisrael atzmam ki mitzad etzem haneshama kol Yisrael hem echad. There's another detail here. This, that Moshe is the one who's connecting Yidden to Ein Sof, is something that's happening to the Yidden collectively. It's not happening to individuals. In fact, if it were only for one individual and not another individual, then it wouldn't be what it is. I don't want to get too creative here, but the story about Nachum Stillerman came to the Rebbe Tzimchana delivering groceries, and she asked him, he was a teenager, she asked him, would you like to ask the Rebbe a question? So he said, he didn't really have any questions, but he just, tried to think of one. So he said, sure, yeah. What's the Rebbe's favorite prayer? And the next time he came to deliver groceries, Rebbe Tzimchana said, I asked the Rebbe. The Rebbe says his favorite prayer is Meida Ani, which is, there are many prayers. Meida Ani, you barely even think of it as a prayer. Who would say their favorite prayer is Meida Ani? Maybe like a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old. Like you didn't get past that point, right? But if you look in the Hayom Yom of Yud Aleph Shvat, which is the Rebbe's first day of Nesius, it speaks about the purity of Meida Ani. That the reason that we say Meida Ani before Negelvasser is not just because it doesn't have any names of Hashem in it. That's the simple reason. In Kuntras in Yonish HaTeiros Chassidus speaks about this at length if you're interested in it. But very good recall. This is my chayzer, Menachem's my chayzer. Buildabeautifulworld.com. The fact that we can say Meida Ani before we even wash our hands is because Meida Ani is the purest expression of Etzem and Neshama, which is impervious to any impurity. It cannot become impure. So the idea that the innermost expression of the Jew comes out, by definition, that has to be equal for all Jews. If you say it's only for people who reach this level or that level, then that's not the etzem. The etzem means that even somebody who, God forbid, is in a not very good, healthy situation, spiritually speaking, someone who's not on a very high level, to the contrary, and yet that etzem is present by them just as much as it is by every single yid. Through Yidden, the Avodah of Yidden, after they receive this meeting their true self that Moshe facilitates, and what happens when they meet their true selves in the deepest way, that even their most external behaviors become aligned with their deepest self. What you do is consistent with who you really are. This brings out a deeper level in the neshama even than what it is on its own. That brings out what a yid really is. And that's why it's equal by everyone. And that's why it's not a response to any particular situation. Okay, brackets. Now, another result of this, when Yidden get in touch with their deepest self, this also, and it's not surprising once you read it, you won't maybe think of it on your own, but after the Rebbe says it, it's kind of obvious, that will also create a condition of Achdus Yisrael, of Jewish unity. Makes sense, because if that which is essential to every single Jew is being revealed, even on the most external level, then that which unites us becomes the most obvious fact of our existence. The unity of Jews that comes out when the etzem is revealed, it's like a davar noisef. It's like, it's not exact, it's like a davar noisef. Therefore, it requires, this is basic Tanya, right? Perek Lamed Beis. That level of Achdus, which is the Achdus Yisrael of Perek Lamed Beis, Perek Lev of Tanya, requires you to set aside the body and focus on the soul. If you look at the body, you're going to see separation. There's going to be competition, competing for scarcity of resources, all that stuff. But if you forget about the body, you just look at the soul. Oh, now I'm at peace with you. Now we're friends. Now we're united. Okay. But you have to discount the body in order for it to kick in. That's the Achdus Yisrael of Perek Lamed Beis. But listen what the Rebbe says. A higher level of Achdus Yisrael than Perek Lamed Beis. Yeah, I said it. But then the higher level of etzem, not the etzem that comes out because of a reason, because of conditions, but the etzem that's there just because it's connected to the essence of God. Which we already said, when that level of essence comes out, then every single level aligns itself to that essence, even the most external levels. So there's perfect integration, perfect consistency. Then what happens? What kind of Achdus comes out? Achdus Yisrael. Their unity is not by overlooking the body, but it includes the body. So that Achdus Yisrael Perek Lamed Beis of Tanya, you have to make the guf tafel, and you make the neshama iker. And if you get too caught up in guf stuff, you're going to ruin the Achdus, because that's only a certain level of etzem. But when the etzem comes out the way that it can come out in a situation like we're in right now, where we can just be disturbed by the fact that we're in gullus, when that comes out, it permeates every single level, And now you can unite to a Jew on every single level. You don't have to avoid physicality. You can incorporate physicality. In other words, maybe I'll say it like this, and I could be wrong. According to Perek Lamed Beis, I don't want to look too much about what's different about us, because it'll make it difficult to unite. So I just try to look at what's the same about us. We're all Jews. We all have a neshama. Okay, leave it at that. Don't get caught up too much. This guy's rich. This guy's poor. This guy's smart. This guy's not so smart. This guy's strong. This guy's weak. Like, don't look at that stuff, because it'll divide us. But when the level of etzem, it's etzem because it's mushreshes be'atzmos, the deepest level comes out, and then all of the levels of the person fall in line with that, then of course you can focus on what's different about us. Because if we're going to put a team together, I need a guy who's good at this, I need a guy who's good at that. So it's an achdus that comes from diversity. Not where we have to overlook what's different about us, even on a physical level, but no, we embrace what's different about us. Okay. We said this before. That the Yidden, by letting Moshe do for them what he does for them, they actually reciprocally do something for him. They elevate him. Then you're going to have a ner tamid. Remember we asked that question. Why in the pasuk, V'Atah Tetzaveh, yichu alecha Shem zayazach, lahalas ner tamid. Why tamid? Why not me'erev ad baiker, like it says in the other pasuk? So why does it say tamid? We hinted to it already. I mean, I said it already. It's that when the deepest level of the soul is revealed, then it's even going to align the keiches hagloyim with it, and then it's not just on every level integrated, but then it's also constant, because it's not dependent on conditions to spur it on. So then it's going to be constant. That's the answer. You could have figured that out from what we learned already. Yeah, this, that the candle here is ner Hashem nishmas adam, that the soul is burning in a consistent way, non-fluctuating. How does that happen? It happens because the essence is revealed. In essence, we know there's a concept that anything that's in essence doesn't change. That's the definition of essence, that which is not changing. In the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maamar, it says that how do they reach this level of ner tamid? It's by adding something to Moshe. The Yidden give something to Moshe. V'yesh loymar, so the Rebbe says, perhaps we can say shebahagilui the etzem and neshama b'derech milamayla lamata al yedei v'atah tetzaveh, that what Moshe does for the Yidden from above to below, yesh chiluk bein erev u'beiker. It has its high moments and low moments, what we're calling evening and day, meaning it's not the same at all times. Like we said earlier in the Maamar, when does it really come out? In the nighttime situations where it's very difficult and therefore it pushes us and we have to respond to that. We have to rise to the challenge. But then what happens? Take that same guy and you put him in a biker situation and he chills out. There's a saying Chassidim have about, it says in Pirkei Avos, that Oz ponim legehenim. Beishas ponim legan Eden, Oz ponim legehenim. That Beishas ponim will translate like an edel person goes to Gan Eden, and an insolent person, a chutz binyak, goes to Gehenim. So Chassidim used to say, Beishas ponim, a person who's like overly meek, he can only stay frum in a Gan Eden. That's where he can. That's the only place he can hack it. But Oz Panim, a chutz ben yak, a guy, a chutz ben the kedusha, the Gehenim, he could even survive in a Gehenim. So the point is that level of etzem that we discussed before, which is a high level, but not the highest level, it really only works when you're in a do or die situation, high intensity situation, or what Menachem was referring to as the trauma, the spiritual trauma. A commission is bar la'el sif yod. Shigam eila shebizman ha'gzeira erev amdu mesiras nefesh k'shabo la'makom she'af shalasik b'teira mitzvahs mitei charchava beker. A nikar behem mesiras nefesh ha'ya lehem mekaydim. And then when the gzeira is lifted, you don't see the intensity anymore. V'amitas ha'inyan in there tamid. But when you want a constant flame, that the neshama should be expressing itself without fluctuation, without ups and downs. Shein shaykh by shinoi. Hu al yedei aveidasim shel Yisrael shegam keiches hagluim yuchad im etem neshama v'yikchu eilecha. That is, let's put it this way, when Yidden allow the Rebbe to teach them that no matter how good life is, there's something deeply lacking until godliness is revealed everywhere. And when that happens, once you get that, then you've got it. And it's not subject to fluctuation. It doesn't go up and down. Because where it comes from is from your deepest self. It's not a response to anything. It's not a response. Befetish, not a response to anything. Response to what? There's no trauma. There's no problem. There's no trigger. It's just the most authentic expression of self. And once the Rebbe gets you in touch with that, with your most authentic expression of self, like, I'm on a mission. Why? Why are you so driven? Why are you so intense? Is there a fire burning? Well, no, because this is who I am. This is what I have to do. This is what I was built for. Once you're in that mode, because it's not based on a reaction to anything, then it doesn't go away. And now we're connecting these two concepts, the concept of Kosas Lamar and V'yikachu Eilecha, that the deeper level, what we're calling the deeper level of Etzem, that even in Etzem there's two levels, a higher level, lower level, and a higher level, that level of Kosas, that's the V'yikachu Eilecha. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu can access. Okay, Yud Beis. V'hinei ha'pirish bepashtus V'Atah Tetzaveh es b'nei Yisrael v'yikachu eilecha gomer hu shemeshu yitzaveh es b'nei Yisrael shkichu eilecha gomer. Simple reading of the verse is that Moshe commands the Jews to bring him, doesn't say oil, but to bring him something. Now on a deeper level, we can understand what that means. This concept of Moshe connecting Yidden to Hashem is in a manner where Moshe gives them the ability to bring this additional new novelty to him. Meaning it's facilitated, it's enabled, there has to be a catalyst. The same thing with our Moshe Rabbeinu, which is whom? Kaved Kedushas Meir V'Chamia Admor Nasi Dereinu. Shaveidase la'er legalis es ha'amona shebechol echad miYisrael shemitzad etem and neshama. That his avodah, The Rebbe is speaking about the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe is Aveda. In other words, the Rebbe is describing the Frierdiker Rebbe's new manner of leadership. Basically, the Frierdiker Rebbe said in Maamar 1927, the Frierdiker Rebbe went to prison, the Frierdiker Rebbe left Russia, and now the Frierdiker Rebbe is in America. And according to the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe is still in America and still running the show and still sending out shluchim, and he's still Raya Mehemna. And it's a whole new level, it's a whole new style. This Avodah that the Rebbe is doing in revealing our Amunah, the Amunah in every single Jew that comes from his deepest neshama, and not as a response to any persecution. Where do we live off? Shavei lo eider legalis es Amunah shebechol echad miYisrael shmetzad etzem neshama hi be'ofen she'achar kach yavdu avedasim b'keich atzmam. It's in a way that they should be able then to do it on their own. Makes sense, right? That if it's your deepest self, not a response to anything external to you, well, now you can do it on your own. You become self-sufficient. What? Tag, you're it. Right. Right. So I started you. I catalyzed the whole thing, but now you got to run. You got to do it. V'ad shiyu ner tomid shein shayach v'yishinagam etzad koiches hagluim, to an extent that it's so you that it's not subject to fluctuation. It's constant. Even on the most external levels. So the Rebbe is describing a reality in which the Raya Mehemna, maybe under certain conditions, was able to get Yidden to respond to persecution and be ready to die for Yiddishkeit, and that was in that era. But now, what's the Raya Mehemna doing? He's getting Jews to be able to be mature, grown-up, adult Jews who don't need anything outside of themselves to be who they are. Because why would you need something outside of yourself to be who you are? Why would you need something external to you to be you? It's a stira minei ubei. Like one of my favorite Yechidus stories, I remember Shlomo Zarchi once said that when he was a bar mitzvah bacher, he asked Rabbi Yoel, when I go into Yechidus, how should I conduct myself? And in the classic, Russian style, so, a little 13-year-old kid going in Yechidus, he has no clue what he's supposed to do. So he asks, what am I supposed to do? Yoel says, I'll take your spot. I'll go instead of you. He's like, no, Freg, I'm just asking, what am I supposed to do? And Yoel's like, yeah, I'll take your spot. So he knows he's saying something wrong. He doesn't know what he's saying wrong. So Yoel says to him, Ganz Elam Haza is Alma de Shikra. This physical world is a false world. And usually in Chassidus, when we say the Elam Haza is Alma de Shikra, what we mean is things are not what they seem. That you see the Bria instead of seeing the Beira. But that's not, from context, it's clear that's not what Yoel meant. He wasn't saying things are not what they seem. He was saying we are not what we seem, even to ourselves. You'll see from context, because he continued. He said, this whole world, the physical world, is a world of falsehood. And in the world of falsehood, there's one dalad amay shel emes, 4 cubits of truth. And in the 4 cubits of truth, you're asking me to tell you how you should behave. That's why I say I'll go in instead of you. Meaning you're going to stand in front of the Rebbe. That's the one place where you are finally you. And now you want that to be an act also? That I should tell you how you should pull it off? Look inside yourself, right? Look inside yourself. Look inside yourself. Yeah. If we would have planned this ahead, we could have played that clip. Look inside yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Elliot Lasky's story in Thine Hearts. That's right. But so you could ask the question, if it was in me all along, then why do I need the Rebbe to tell me? Okay, that's a classic question. There's a famous story of Itzik's shul in Krakow. You know the story, the shul in Krakow. The guy had a dream every night that he has a treasure under a bridge in Prague. He's never been to Prague. Finally, he gets obsessed with the idea. I dream every night I got to go to Prague. He goes to Prague. He sees the castle. Oh, this is what I dream every night. Oh, there's the bridge. I see it every night. And under the bridge, when in my dream I dig and I find the treasure. I'm going to dig and find the treasure. And but there's a guard there, so he's nervous to do it. So he doesn't do it. And he spends days just sort of walking around, hesitating. Finally, he's like, I got to just, honesty is the best policy. So he tells the guard, he's like, listen, this is crazy, but every night in my life I have a dream and I see this spot and I dig under this bridge and I find my treasure and I had to follow my dream. And the guard laughs at him and says, if everyone were as foolish as you know where I would be right now? I have a dream every night of my life. I dream I'm in Krakow, a city where I've never been, in the Jewish quarter where I would never step foot. And I'm in a house with a little dirt floor, and I push the oven aside and I dig and I find a treasure and I become rich. And Itzik realizes the guy's describing his house. He turns around, he goes home, pushes aside the oven, digs up the floor, finds his treasure. He had the treasure all along. He was living on top of the treasure his whole life. But he had to have it pointed out to him. This is a famous story of a soul geologist. The college kids asked the Rebbe, what's the point of a Rebbe? The Rebbe said, Rebbe's a soul geologist. What's a geologist? Before you know what a soul geologist is, you have to know what a geologist is. Geologist, as the Rebbe said, there's natural resources in the earth, but it's not everywhere, and you got to know what to dig for and where to dig. So you hire the geologist, he knows. The same thing, there are natural resources in every Jew. Treasures. But you need the soul geologist to tell you what to dig for and where to dig. So it's your own truest self. The Rebbe is not turning you into anything. The Rebbe is reinstating your truest identity, and that should be revealed not just under certain conditions, but at all times, and not just on a certain level, but at every level. Where does the Rebbe himself get it from? Wow. That's a deep question, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, famous story that the elder Chassidim were asking the Rebbe not to go to the oil so much. It would be hard on his health. The Rebbe said, I also need a Rebbe, therefore I have to go to the oil. Just a half a block away, correct. Thank you, Menachem. Okay. Let's break it down, you're saying? We said yesterday. Yeah. He's asking, like, let's break it down. Like, what's our part? What's the Rebbe's part? Like, what are we doing actually here? How do we do this? Yeah, practically speaking. Yeah. Last night we mentioned a letter in the Igros to Moshe Yitzchak Hecht. And he's begging for the Rebbe to save him. And the Rebbe says, I already took care of it. And I sent Moshe Yitzchak Hecht. You should meet the guy. Actually, we said it this morning. But what does that mean? I mean, besides for being inspirational, what does that mean? Apparently what it means is that I have a certain concept of myself, and it's wrong. It's wrong. Distorted. Severely limited. And the Rebbe has another concept of me. And that the Rebbe is able to get me to behave more like I really am. Now, how does the Rebbe do that? Could be by learning this Maamar. Could be by learning the letter to Moshe Yitzchak Hecht. Or it could be in other ways that I mehemna zana mefarnes amuna in spiritual ways that we don't really truly understand. The Rebbe said that the Rebbeim have times for thinking about their chassidim, and that has an effect on the chassidim. So it doesn't even have to be something that you're conscious of. It'll have an effect on you. But the point is, what is the Rebbe's role? The Rebbe is to get you to be you, to the real you, the deepest, truest you, which is capable of accomplishing anything. By the way, going back to the Maida'ani story. So I mentioned the story of Nochem Stillerman about the Rebbe's favorite prayer, Maida'ani. So he said later on, he went to college, he came back, and he came into a Fabrengen, and he walked into the middle of the Fabrengen, and he heard the Rebbe saying, what does Maida'ani mean? Like, this is the last thing, that he had heard, and he walks right in, and boom, the Rebbe speaking of Maida'ani. We say, Maida'ani, Lefenecha melech hai v'kam shechazati b'nishmos b'chem l'rabba munasecha. What does it mean, rabba munasecha? So the simple, conventional meaning is, Hashem, you are so reliable. Your faithfulness is great. Meaning, you took my soul and you gave it back to me. You get my most precious asset, and you didn't run away with it. You gave it back to me. Rabba Munasecha, you're so reliable. But on a deeper level, it means Rabba Munasecha. We say to Hashem, Hashem, you have so much faith. You have so much emunah. Now, what does that mean? Hashem has emunah. When we have emunah, it means we have emunah in Hashem. But when Hashem has emunah, in whom does Hashem have emunah? In us. And what's the proof that he has emunah in us? He gave you back your soul. So you wake up in the morning and you say, I am Maida, I admit that Hashem, you just gave me the biggest vote of confidence there is. So the point is that when the Rebbe informs you of who you are, act like it. Act like it. That's it. So yes, what's our role? The thing is like this, it doesn't require an extra integration process. Because of the nature of it, it automatically will be expressed on every level. If you're talking about the trauma-induced ma'or, then there has to be a post-integration process, because it's not really you on the deepest level. But when it's the Derish V style, where your causes just because godliness isn't revealed everywhere, meaning for no particular reason other than Shechinta Begulusa, the nature of that does not require an extra or separate integration process. Because it is the essence of who you are, and the essence means on every single level. So in other words, when the Rebbe gets you to finally meet your true self, what will happen automatically is you will start to behave like your true self, which is frightening if you think about it for a moment, because that implies there could be a situation where you're not behaving like your true self. So then what are you behaving like? If you're not, the story Zushya said, when I come Lamaila, I'm not afraid they're going to say, why weren't you Avram Avinu? Why weren't you Moshe Rabbeinu? I'm afraid they're going to say, Zushya, why weren't you Zushya, right? So if you're not being your true self, then who are you being? And who's being the true you? Someone could be playing a role. That is correct. No, lav dafka. I'm just saying, like, if you're not being you, who's being you? And even if they are, but that's not their role, so it's fake. So in other words, you are you. Your whole history, your whole life, your whole story, your talents, your weaknesses, your neurodivergence, the way you're wired, the things you see that other people don't see, things you don't see that everyone else sees, right? And that's what's you. That's you. That's koichas hagaluyim. All the things that make you special and different. All the information on your driver's license. That's also part of all koichas hagaluyim. Comes the Rai Mehemna and introduces you to your truest self. And once that happens, you will no longer play a role. You will no longer be a faker. You will know, even a faker in a good way, like trying to be something good. And it's the most natural state of being. which is funny because, a lot of the, I don't want to, we're learning a Maamar and I want to wrap up and I'm not here to get on a soapbox, but like a lot of times people, when they talk about Avodah, it's like, it's so demanding, it's so uncomfortable. Yeah, going to the oil brings out anxiety. We heard somebody say that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, somebody said that. Going to the oil is the most natural place to be. And halavai, you should bring that with you after you leave the oil and continue being in that state afterwards in the days that follow. So no one's twisting you into a pretzel. If anyone did, it's you. And I'm not blaming you because we learn how to be based on the way people react to us and we try to please everyone. Okay, we twist ourselves into a pretzel based on what we think we need to be. Comes to Rebbe and untwists the whole pretzel and says, will you just be you? Hashem made one of you. I need you to be you in order to bring Mashiach. That's it. Why is this the last time? I mean, obviously it's speculative. Right. Yeah. I mean, and obviously you understand whatever I'm saying is bli achrayus, klal. Yeah. I mean, it alludes to it earlier when we said that it becomes tamid, it's without fluctuation, you're able to do it on your own, b'koyach atzmai. It's basically what Rebbe is saying, guys, you don't need anything propping you up. If I've done my job, now it's you. Like, I show you who you are, now run with it, now do it, express it. Let's finish. When Mashiach comes, godliness will be revealed not just as something that's coming superimposed from above, but the lowest levels will see how they're also godly. And then, we're going to have? We're going to have the oil of the menorah in the most literal, simple sense, lighting the lights in the Beis HaMikdash, Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you for those who joined us online. Charity.com/RST. Those who have not yet visited the oil for Gimel Tammuz, you can still, if you can still try to make it here, you should still try to make it here. And if you can't, what's the address for an email? The rebesohel.com. Oh, that's a website. It's an address. Okay, and you can leave. You can write. You can fill out a form, and it will be brought today to the aisle. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you, everybody.